Story 1. A January Snowstorm Nightmare. I always thought road trips were supposed to feel like freedom. Windows down, music blasting, the world slipping by in a blur of desert and sky. That's how it started anyway. Just a family chasing the tail end of a memory, hoping Arkansas still held pieces of the past we hadn't buried yet. It was early January 2011 when we left Southern California. The holiday lights were still up on our street, blinking drowsily in the morning fog as we loaded the car. My sisters, Natalie and June, shoved bags into the back of our rust-bitten 1979 Honda, the kind of car that always made strangers ask if we were okay. We weren't, not really. You don't say that out loud when the sun's barely up and your mother's trying to stay brave in front of your grandfather. He stood by the curb in a heavy coat and scarf, his lined hands wrapped tight around a thermos. "Let's get on the road before the sun burns up all the good luck," he said, smiling the way old people do when they want you to stop worrying. We pulled onto Interstate 40 with the heater humming weakly, at the desert yawning open ahead. For the first few hours it was good, comfortable even. June shared a bag of chips across the front seat while Natalie flipped through our dad's old music tapes. Fleetwood Mac, CCR, Patsy Cline. Mom drove like she always did, focused and silent, chewing the edge of her lip whenever she hit a bump. We passed Barstow just before noon. That's when the wind picked up. I noticed at first how the sand curled off the shoulder in little spirals, dancing like it was trying to warn us of something. I leaned forward and muttered, "Storm's coming," mostly to myself. We stopped for gas somewhere in New Mexico, a little roadside station with a single bathroom key chained to a hubcap. The air smelled like burnt coffee and diesel. While Mom fueled up, a trucker in a neon vest came out of the mini-mart with a coffee in one hand and a worried look in the other. He paused when he saw us, then nodded toward the highway. "You folks headed east?" he asked. Mom nodded. "Arkansas." He sipped his coffee, hesitating. "Storm's coming, fast. Freezing fog in Texas Panhandle. Might be better to wait it out." That should have been the sign to turn back. But you don't come all that way just to stop at the edge of nowhere. Not when your mother's clinging to the idea of seeing her childhood home one more time, and your grandfather keeps calling this trip his last ride. So we thanked the trucker, bundled up tighter, and got back in the car. The sky grew heavier the farther we drove, like the clouds were sitting lower than they should. Natalie joked that the sun had clocked out early. No one laughed. Somewhere past Tucumcari, we hit sleet. Just a whisper of it at first, tiny flecks on the windshield. By the time we crossed into Texas, the road had vanished under a wet sheen that glistened like oil. I don't remember when the tape deck stopped playing, but I remember the silence. It came all at once, the kind of silence that presses on your ears like something's just waiting to be heard. That's when Grandfather started murmuring. In the back seat, he fidgeted with his coat buttons, muttering names under his breath. Names none of us recognized. Mom glanced at him through the mirror and didn't say anything, just gripped the wheel tighter. Outside, the world had gone white. Inside, we just kept going. It started as flurries, little flakes caught in the wipers, melting as fast as they landed. We were somewhere past Amarillo by then, the world on either side of the highway turning to a smudged charcoal sketch. The sun had disappeared hours earlier behind a sheet of gray, and now even the afternoon looked like dusk. By the time we saw the first abandoned car on the shoulder, half-buried windshield frosted over, no one in our car was talking. The road was vanishing under powder. My mother leaned in over the steering wheel, her eyes flicking between the rearview mirror and the white lines that were slowly being swallowed by the snow. "Stay awake," she said, her voice tight. "I need all of you awake." I watched my grandfather in the back seat. He hadn't said much since the morning, but now he was mumbling again, just under his breath. His hands were folded in his lap, but his fingers moved constantly, twitching like he was counting something. Natalie asked if he was cold. He didn't answer. Visibility dropped to nothing by the time we reached Mount Pleasant. The wind didn't just blow, it shoved. Each gust slammed against the side of the Honda like it was trying to tip us into the trees. Snow spun across the road in a thick sideways curtain. We passed under a flickering overpass light, and Mom made the call. We need to pull off. Now. We spotted a blue exit sign half covered in snow and turned onto the ramp. That's when it happened. Black ice. You never see it. Not until you're already on it. The tires lost grip and the world slipped. My stomach hit my spine as we slid, slow and soundless, like the road had turned to glass. There was no scream, no crash. Just a soft crunch as the car settled sideways into a snowbank. The front end angled into a drift, wheels spinning uselessly. We sat still for a second. No one moved. The only sound was the fan of the heater. And then that stopped too. A cough from the engine. Then silence. The cold came fast. At first, we laughed. Not real laughter, nervous, forced little puffs of breath that fogged up the windows. We kept saying we'd just wait it out, that someone would come by. But the snow kept falling, thicker, meaner. The windshield fog turned to frost. Time crawled. Maybe an hour passed, maybe more. The windows glazed over, the breath from 5 people frosting the inside of the glass like a tomb sealing shut. Natalie wrapped her arms around herself and pressed her feet against the back of the seat. June had her scarf pulled up over her face, shivering in near silence. My grandfather muttered, "Not this again," to no one. I could hear the engine ticking as it cooled, little metallic pops echoing like footsteps on frozen tile. We tried the heater again. Nothing. Mom turned the key twice, but the engine only groaned. I watched my breath rise into the air and vanish, like the warmth was being pulled out of us one by one. At some point, the outside world just disappeared, like the snow had swallowed everything beyond the windows. No lights, no sound, just the wind and the pressing dark. Then, out of nowhere, a light, just one, a beam, cutting through the white from somewhere ahead. It swayed, bouncing slightly with each step. A flashlight. A figure approached, bundled in layers, and a bright orange beanie. I couldn't make out the face at first, just the crunch of boots on snow and the beam of light scanning the car. The figure knocked on the window with gloved knuckles, then signaled for us to follow. It took all our strength just to open the doors. Snow poured in like smoke, and the cold outside slapped my skin like wet glass. My legs barely worked. Grandfather had to be helped out. We stumbled after the stranger through the white curtain, half crawling across the lot toward the faint orange glow of an old gas station 100 yards away. I looked back once. The Honda was already fading into the storm behind us, half buried, half forgotten, like it had never been there at all. The gas station door creaked open like it hadn't moved in years. A bell jingled overhead, sharp and too loud against the silence we'd come to know. The warmth hit us like a wall, and for a moment it didn't even feel real. My skin stung from the sudden change in temperature, but I didn't care. I stepped fully inside, boots dripping onto the rubber mat, and tried to stop my hands from shaking. The place was old, not run down exactly, but still the kind of quiet store that feels like it only wakes up for emergencies. Fluorescent lights buzzed above a cracked linoleum floor. Racks of faded snacks sat untouched. A small coffee machine blinked behind the counter. The man who had led us in stood under the buzzing lights, his orange beanie soaked through and his heavy coat dripping snow. He looked like he'd been carved from the same winter we had just escaped, skin pale, beard rimmed with frost. He didn't say much at first, just nodded toward the vending machine and waved us in with one gloved hand. We poured into the warmth. Mom helped Grandfather into a plastic chair by the small wall heater. Natalie and June hovered near the hot drink machine, gripping foam cups of something vaguely resembling cocoa. No one spoke for a while, not because we didn't have things to say, but because the words just didn't come. Finally, the man spoke. "You were lucky. A few more hours in that car and—" He stopped himself, eyes flicking toward my grandfather, who sat with his eyes closed and hands cupped near the heater. Mom cleared her throat. We were headed to Arkansas. Family business. The man looked out the frosted window, where snow still blew sideways like smoke through broken glass. "You're not getting there tonight. Not with the storm turning the roads to glass up north." He turned back to us. "You keep going. You're not coming back. That's just the truth of it." Silence again, except for the hum of the heater and the occasional clink of snow melt dripping from our jackets onto the floor. We glanced at each other. I think we were all waiting for Mom to argue, to say that we'd come too far to turn back now, but she didn't. Instead, she rubbed her temples and let out a slow breath. "Can we wait here a bit? Let the snow ease up?" she asked. The man gave a half shrug. "You can stay as long as you want, but the storm isn't going to ease. Not out there. Not tonight." That was the first time I noticed something odd. Not frightening, just off. The windows were almost entirely fogged, but what I could see through the glass didn't look right. The road was empty, not just quiet, completely still. No other cars, no movement, not even headlights in the distance. It felt like we were the only ones left awake, inside a world that had decided to stop turning. I pressed my hand against the window, leaving a smear in the condensation. The snowflakes outside didn't drift like normal. They spun wildly in tight, angry spirals like they were hunting for something. The man noticed me staring. "Snow gets strange out here sometimes, blows through the pines and makes you see things. I've been on this shift 20 years. Learned not to look too long." Eventually, we couldn't stall any longer. The warmth had settled into our bones, and Grandfather had stopped shaking. Mom helped him up, while June restocked the glove compartment with napkins and cough drops from the store shelves. Natalie filled the thermos with hot water from the coffee machine. No one complained when Mom said, "We're heading back." The attendant just nodded. "Good choice." He walked us out the back door to avoid the worst of the wind. We looked back once, just before getting into the car. The gas station stood under the flickering sign like a lantern in a forgotten place. Old, unmoving, untouched by time. As we pulled away, the snow fell slower but heavier, like it didn't want us to leave. We drove through a town that looked like it had gone to sleep long before we arrived. Curtains were drawn, street lamps blinked dimly, shadows long and wrong under the yellow light. It felt like the whole town was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. We didn't stop to find out what. None of us said much on the road that night. Just the hum of the engine, the creak of old suspension, and the sound of tires crunching through snow. It should have felt like safety, but all it felt like was being followed. We'd been driving west for hours, tracing back the ghost of our own tire tracks through a storm that refused to forget us. The warmth from the gas station faded too quickly. The roads hadn't cleared much, but they weren't as savage as the ones near Mount Pleasant. The snow still fell, but in a tired, drifting way, like the storm had done its damage and was now just watching us go. We hadn't spoken since we left. The silence in the car wasn't from anger or exhaustion anymore. It was fear, lingering, quiet fear that still sat between us like a sixth passenger. Mom finally broke the stillness when she saw a lit rest stop ahead. A low concrete building huddled against the snow like it wanted to disappear into it. "Let's stop, just for a few minutes," she'd said. "Stretch our legs. Bathroom." None of us argued. We pulled into the lot, half plowed and slick. I helped Grandfather out of the car while the others went inside. He stood stiffly, rubbing his knees, staring out across the rows of parked semis, idling like sleeping giants. "I'm just gonna walk a little," he mumbled. "Loosen up the legs." I nodded. "Okay, just around here. I'll be right back." He gave me a half smile. Then he walked off. I was inside maybe 7 minutes, maybe 10. It's hard to say exactly when the panic started, just that it started quietly with Mom saying, "Where's Dad?" and June looking up with wide eyes. We scattered fast, calling his name into the cold. My boots crunched hard across ice as I moved from one row of trucks to the next, shouting louder each time. My voice was eaten by the wind, swallowed whole by snowflakes that had started to fall again, angrier now, faster. The drivers stayed in their cabs, doors shut, windows fogged. No one looked out. Every second felt like a minute. Every minute felt like the end. I turned a corner near a long red rig with its engine humming softly and stopped. There he was. My grandfather stood beside the passenger door of the truck, staring ahead into nothing. His hands were curled into fists, white from the cold. His coat hung open. He didn't seem to see me. I ran to him, grabbing his shoulders. "Grandpa." He blinked slowly and turned to look at me. His lips trembled when he spoke. "I thought you left me," he whispered. "You were all gone. I couldn't remember where the car was. Thought maybe this truck was yours." He was shaking, more from fear than the cold. I guided him back across the lot. My throat tightened when I saw the relief crash across my sisters' faces. Natalie started crying silently. June hugged her with stiff arms. We got him back in the Honda, wrapped him in the last blanket, and turned the heater to its highest setting. No one said another word as we pulled out. The road west stretched on, flat and endless. Road signs flickered past like dying fireflies. Shadows passed across our headlights. Brief, shifting shapes that might have been trees or not. We didn't look too long. The Honda sounded older than ever now, wheezing up hills, creaking over bridges. Every bolt and rattle seemed to speak, though none of us could understand the language. I remember thinking that even the car was tired, changed. By the time the California state sign appeared, the snow had stopped. The sky was wide and empty and quiet. We didn't cheer. We didn't even exhale. We got home late the next night, after midnight. We left the bags in the car. No one wanted to talk about what had happened, what we'd seen, or what we almost lost. The next day, Mom canceled the trip permanently. No one objected. Arkansas would have to wait, maybe forever. I don't think it was just the storm that broke something in us. It was the silence, the way time unraveled in the dark, the way the snow seemed to move with intention, the way my grandfather stared into space like something had followed him back. Maybe it had. We never took that road again. Not after what it took from us. Story 2. The Echo in the Canyon. It was the summer I turned 10. The desert had a way of swallowing sound and time, stretching both until neither seemed real anymore. I remember the crunch of gravel under my boots and the sunburn crawling slowly across my neck as I trailed behind my grandfather through the canyon lands. He wasn't the kind of man who talked much. Ex-park ranger, face like sandstone, voice like gravel when he did speak. He walked with a steady rhythm, the same way he did everything else. Measured, unshakable, and I worshipped him for it. We'd driven 6 hours to a dry, winding gorge in the middle of nowhere, chasing rumors of stocked ponds and secret fishing spots. But by noon, the lines were still, the hooks clean, and the water as lifeless as the red dirt under our feet. My grandfather stood statue-like on the bank, eyes fixed on the currentless pool as if daring it to move. I tossed in pebbles, got bored, skipped rocks. He gave me jerky and told me to save the rest for the hike back. When the shadow shifted just slightly and the wind stopped moving, he said it was time to go. The trail back to the car was narrow and uneven, carved between walls of rock that rose like broken teeth on either side. We didn't speak much, just the sound of our boots on stone and the occasional wind brushing past the canyon's mouth. Then, out of nowhere, he called back to me. "Keep up." His voice cracked off the canyon walls like thunder, repeating over and over till it finally died out somewhere behind me. I grinned. I was a kid. I wanted to try it too. So I cupped my hands around my mouth and shouted, "I'm right here." Nothing, not even a whisper. I tried again, louder this time. "I'm right here." The only response was the dull crunch of my boots and the dry hiss of wind scraping across rock. I stopped walking. My chest felt tight. The canyon had echoed for him. I'd heard it. But mine just vanished. No bounce, no return, just gone. I turned to look at the walls, tall, red, jagged, still. I clapped my hands once, sharp and loud. Nothing. A strange pressure crept into my ears, like being too deep underwater. I felt suddenly small in a way that had nothing to do with my age. The canyon was looking at me, not watching, looking like it understood I didn't belong here. I caught up to my grandfather and said quietly, "My echo stopped." He didn't look at me. He just kept walking. I kept staring at the stone, afraid that if I turned my back on it, something would follow, something that didn't make noise. I didn't know it then, but that was the last normal hour of my life. Everything after that hike, after the silence, was something else. Something I've never been able to forget. Something I've never told anyone until now. And it all started when my voice disappeared into the canyon and didn't come back. I didn't say anything right away. Not when we climbed the last incline out of the canyon, not when the truck came into view, half buried in red dust and shimmering heat waves, not even when I climbed into the passenger seat and pulled the door shut, the metal handle hot enough to sting my palm, but I couldn't stop thinking about it, the way my voice had vanished, swallowed by rock and sun. The canyon hadn't just refused to echo me. It had taken the sound. I was quiet as we drove out, the tires crunching over gravel and dry weeds. We hit pavement a few minutes later. That's when I spoke. My echo didn't come back, I said. My grandfather didn't react at first, just kept driving. But something in his face shifted, like someone had pressed pause on him. He stared forward for another long moment, the wind whistling faintly through the cracked window. Then he slammed on the brakes. The seatbelt bit into my shoulder. Dust rose in thick clouds around the truck. Without a word, he reached behind his seat and pulled out a full zip bag of jelly beans, cheap ones, the kind you only get in bulk, and a dented metal flask. He shoved both into my hands. "Eat every one," he said, voice flat. "All of them, and drink this now." I blinked. "What?" He didn't repeat himself, just stared at me with this look I'd never seen before, not anger, not annoyance, something worse, fear. That did it. I tore the bag open and started shoving jelly beans into my mouth, handfuls of them. The sugar was so thick it burned my tongue. Before I could swallow the second mouthful, he unscrewed the flask and held it up to my lips. It was bitter, not just strong, offensive, like burnt oil and tree bark. I gagged. My eyes watered. "Keep drinking." I did. I drank until I coughed, then drank again. My stomach churned. The sweetness from the jelly beans clashed hard with the black sludge of the coffee, and the mix made me dizzy. "Why?" I finally asked, breathless and sticky-mouthed. "What is this?" He didn't answer for a long time. The truck idled on the roadside, heat buzzing in the air, the desert stretching endless and empty on either side. Finally, he looked at me. "You shouted into something that doesn't belong here," he said. Then he shifted the truck into drive and peeled back onto the road faster than before. I didn't know what that meant. Not really. I was 10. But his voice made something deep in my chest go cold, and the caffeine started to hit. Hard. My heart jittered. My hands trembled. I felt too awakened, not awake at all. We drove into the fading sunlight, the shadows growing longer, the road stretching ahead like it might never end. My grandfather didn't say another word for miles, but every few minutes he checked the rear-view mirror, not for traffic, not for animals. He was looking for something else, something he thought might be following us. And by then, I was starting to think he might be right. I think we passed the last gas station an hour ago. It was just a flicker of yellow lights behind dusty glass, swallowed by the horizon almost as soon as we passed it. Now, it's just us and the road. The caffeine is clawing through my veins, keeping my heart thudding even though I'm exhausted. I can feel the sugar crash creeping up behind my eyes and at the back of my skull. My legs jitter. My teeth ache from grinding jelly beans. My grandfather hasn't said a word in over 20 minutes. He just stares straight ahead, one hand locked on the wheel, the other resting on the gear shift like it's a trigger. I look out the window, nothing but open desert and sky. Then I see it. At first, it's a blur, like heat rising off the asphalt. But it moves wrong. It keeps pace with us, skimming just outside the shoulder, fast, too fast. It's long, tall, and dark like it's cut from the night itself. A shape, a silhouette. It has arms, long ones. One of them lifts slowly and taps the passenger window just once. Tap. I scream, or I try to. The sound barely leaves my mouth. My throat closes like something sitting on it. "Grandpa," I choke out. He sees it immediately. He doesn't question. He doesn't blink. He floors the gas. The truck lurches forward, engine roaring, wheels squealing as we scream down the empty highway. I'm thrown back against my seat. But the shape, it keeps up, effortlessly, like it's not even running. It just glides. "Don't look away," my grandfather shouts, eyes wild now. "Keep your eyes open." I can't help it. I glance back. It's closer now. I see it in full. A black humanoid figure with no face. Just two pits of lightless space where eyes should be. But inside those voids, stars. Like windows into some deep sky that shouldn't be there. The wind rushes louder. The door rattles. The shape reaches a hand toward the handle. Its fingers are too long. They curl under the door like they're trying to peel it open. My whole body goes stiff with fear. "What is it?" I cry. "It's hungry," my grandfather growls. "And you called to it." I don't know what he means. I don't want to know. I'm shaking. My eyelids are twitching. Sleep pulls at me like a riptide. Not natural sleep, but something heavier. Something that feels like it wants to trap me. "It's trying to make you sleep," Grandpa roars. "That's how it feeds, through dreams. If you drift off even for a second, it'll pull you in." My head slumps, my thoughts slow. The desert blurs outside the window, then Grandpa slaps my arm, hard. "Wake up!" I jerk upright. Outside, the thing is smiling. Or maybe it's just mimicking a smile. No mouth, just a widening crack of starlight where its face should be. Its hand tightens on the door. Grandpa mutters something under his breath. Not a prayer, just a curse. A breath of old fear. Then he jerks the wheel hard, tires shrieking as we swerve across the yellow lines. The shape stumbles, but doesn't fall. It's still coming, still watching me, and I don't think it's going to stop. Not until I do. The sound of the engine was the only thing tethering me to consciousness. It screamed beneath us, gears straining as Grandpa pushed the truck to its limit. The whole cab vibrated like it was about to fall apart, and still, it stayed with us. The silhouette, still outside the window, still smiling. I felt it before I saw it, a sudden cold, not like wind, but like stepping into a place that shouldn't exist, a numbness that crawled up from the floorboards, through the soles of my shoes, past my knees. Then I felt something brush against my ankle. I looked down. Its fingers were inside the truck, threaded up through the crack in the door, impossibly long, curling along the edge of the seat. One knuckle at a time, they crept toward my leg like they knew exactly where to go. I tried to scream, but no sound came out. My throat was dry. My limbs were too heavy. I could barely keep my eyes open. The coffee, the jelly beans, all of it fading. I blinked once, and the sky outside turned darker. Not night. Something deeper than night. The stars in the thing's face were spinning now, slowly, like they were alive. Then everything began to slide. The world tilted sideways. I couldn't move. My head slumped to the right. And in that moment, I swear, I felt my heartbeat slowing, like it was waiting, feeding. "Wake up!" Grandpa's voice tore through me like a gunshot. The truck swerved hard, left, then right again. I hit the door, then bounced off the seat. Something ripped and snapped outside. I caught a last glimpse. The thing tumbling, its fingers slipping off the door, its head turning as it lost its grip, but not before it looked straight into me. Those eyes, those starless, endless voids, they locked onto mine, and I fell into them. When I woke up, the room was white, clean, cold, too quiet. A slow beep ticked somewhere behind me, syncing up with my pulse. There was a woman by the window in a pale blue coat. She turned when she saw me stir. "You're awake?" she said softly. "You've been out for 3 days." I tried to speak. My voice was nothing, just a whisper. "Dehydration," she explained. "Some kind of shock response. Your grandfather told us you ate nothing but candy and black coffee before collapsing." I blinked. She didn't understand. None of them did. He was sitting in the corner, Grandpa, arms crossed, silent. The same way he looked when I forgot to pack my water bottle or left the cooler open. But when I caught his eye, I saw something different. Fear. He stood slowly, walked to my bedside, and leaned in. His voice was low, almost a whisper. "It almost got you." I nodded. I tried to. He placed something on the table next to me, a plastic bag. Inside, a half-full packet of jelly beans and the dented metal flask. "I kept driving all night," he said. "Didn't stop till the sun came up." He didn't say more. He didn't have to. I knew what I'd seen, what I'd felt, and somewhere, out there in the long desert night, it was still waiting, still listening. I never went back to the canyon, never asked Grandpa to take me fishing again. But sometimes, on long drives, I'll roll down the window just a crack, call out, just to hear my echo bounce back. And if I don't hear it, if my voice comes back faint or doesn't come back at all, I turn around, no matter what, because I remember what Grandpa told me the night it all happened. The only warning that matters, if your voice stops echoing, cancel your road trip. Story 3. The Butter Street Hitchhiker. You don't end up on Butter Street by accident. It's not on most maps. And when it is, the name's usually smudged. Like the paper itself knew better. The truckers say the pavement there hums under your tires, even if you're idling. Old-timers at the corner diner whisper it's where the veil wears thin, but they don't elaborate. Everyone has a version of the story, and none of them end with the driver making it home unchanged. That's probably why I decided to go. I'm not a thrill seeker. I don't chase ghosts. But the question had rotted inside me for too long, and Butter Street promised an answer. They say, if you follow the instructions, car running, lights off, radio silent, you might meet him. And if you do, and if you're brave enough, you get to ask one question. Just one. It had to be midnight, exactly. So I sat in my garage, hands trembling a little on the steering wheel, watching the clock tick to 12 o'clock. Then I turned the key. The engine came to life with a low purr. Outside, the world was still. No breeze, no insects. Just a dry, eerie silence thick enough to feel. I left my driveway without headlights, the blackness swallowing me whole as I turned onto the back roads out of town. The plan was simple. Arrive on Butter Street just before 3 a.m. That's when he's supposed to appear. People say the trip changes depending on the driver. Some roads seem longer. Familiar turns lead to places that don't make sense. And the closer you get, the more the world begins to feel off. They weren't wrong. It started around 1:30. Trees that had lined the roads for years were gone, replaced by open, silent fields that didn't belong. I saw an old payphone standing alone in the grass, cord ripped, handset swinging gently though there was no wind. The radio buzzed once, though I hadn't touched it, just a quick burst of static, then silence again. By 2 a.m., the feeling hit me, that unmistakable sensation of being watched, not from one direction either. It was like the darkness had eyes. I kept driving. The roads narrowed, pavement cracked in fresh lines that hadn't been there before. Road signs appeared in languages I couldn't read. Once, I thought I saw a dog in the middle of the road. I slowed to a crawl, but it didn't move, didn't blink, just stared at the car. When I blinked, it was gone. I didn't check the time again until I passed the rusted Butter Street sign, its letters warped as if melted. 2:58 a.m. I pulled onto the shoulder, engine humming quietly. The street was a tunnel of black trees, tangled above like clasped fingers. I left the headlights off. The dashboard light dimmed to nothing. The car idled in pitch black. I didn't breathe loud. I didn't speak. I didn't even blink too hard. The rules were clear. No distractions, no turning around, no eye contact. I thought of Abigail, how she looked the night before she vanished, the unanswered questions, the guilt I carried like broken glass in my chest. I had to know. Just one question. She never said goodbye. The words flickered through my mind like a headline on fire. That was the last thing I wrote in my journal before this trip. I didn't know why, not then. Now I think maybe she never said goodbye because she was never really gone. I stared ahead, gripping the wheel tight enough to hurt, and waited for 3 a.m. And then, just as the second hand hit its mark, the back seat dipped. No door opened, no footsteps, just the heavy, unmistakable weight of someone sitting behind me. And then a voice, calm, low, and wet. It's a bad night for rain, but outside it hadn't rained in weeks. The clock on the dash hit 3 a.m., not 2:59, not 3:01, 3:00 sharp. That was when the weight shifted in the back seat. No door opened, no footsteps approached. Just the muffled creak of old upholstery sinking as though someone had always been there, just waiting to be noticed. I didn't turn around. The rules were carved into my thoughts by then, silent, strict, inviolable. Keep the car running, lights off, no music, and don't look at him until the very end. I stared straight ahead, my knuckles bone white on the steering wheel. Then came the voice, low, calm, unbothered by the pitch-black interior. It's a bad night for rain. Outside, the sky remained dry and cloudless. Dust still clung to the windshield from back roads. I hadn't seen rain in days, but I could hear water now. Slow droplets hitting something soft behind me, drip, 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 each one louder than the last, as if echoing through the cabin of a ship lost at sea. The hitchhiker shifted in the seat. Funny place, Butter Street, he said lightly, like he was just making small talk on a long ride. Not many people come here on purpose. I said nothing. He chuckled, soft and damp. You're doing well. Most people don't last past the silence. I kept my eyes locked on the void of the road ahead. The trees looked darker now, as if they'd grown denser in the last minute. Branches tangled into a canopy that blocked out even the stars. You from Pine Hollow, right? East Side? The hitchhiker asked. Used to be a mill town. Real proud folks. I remember that place. I froze. He wasn't guessing. He knew. You took a girl named Abigail to the fall fair once, didn't you? Her hair was red back then. She laughed when you dropped your funnel cake. My breath caught. He kept going. She cried in your kitchen the night before she left. That part you remember, but you don't remember the words you said after she asked you to come with her. His tone had shifted, less playful now. He sounded tired, not angry, just like someone who'd been waiting a long time to be heard. I felt the car drift gently, the wheels hugging the road in a way that didn't feel natural. The familiar landmarks were gone. There were no signs, no other vehicles. Even the stars above had vanished. It was like the world had folded into a darker version of itself, still shaped like a road, but no longer part of any map. Butter Street was the only thing left. You ever wonder where you are right now? He asked. Not just physically, I mean. Where you are. What part of yourself let you come here? He laughed again, quiet, thoughtful, not mocking. I tried to steady my breath. The rearview mirror reflected only darkness, no face, just a faint shimmer of wetness, as if a soaked shadow was lounging back there. Some places, he said, don't forget. They just wait. Some people too. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw a road sign melt into nothing. One moment, it was there, bent and rusted. The next, it had dissolved like fog in a headlight. My dashboard glitched. The temperature display blinked a string of unfamiliar characters before going blank entirely. My hands clenched harder on the wheel. He leaned forward slightly. I felt it, pressure in the air, like static before a lightning strike. You want to ask her something? I can feel it on you, he said softly. Everyone comes here wanting to ask something they already know the answer to. But yours is different. His voice was suddenly right behind my ear. I think she's waiting. I didn't speak. I couldn't. My eyes stayed forward as the road continued to twist. Longer now somehow. Each curve unfamiliar. Every tree warped just enough to be wrong. My rear tires hissed over patches of pavement that felt like they shouldn't be there. Something dripped again. A slow, heavy sound, like a soaked jacket hitting tile. Then he sat back. The pressure lifted. Keep going, he said. We're not there yet. And just like that, silence returned. Heavy and unnatural. I didn't check the clock. I just kept driving, deeper into the dark. Somewhere between 3 a.m. and 3:26 a.m., the world peeled away. No crash, no sudden lurch, just a quiet unraveling, like stepping into a place already abandoned by time. I didn't notice it at first. The changes were subtle. My headlights, though off, no longer reflected anything. The outline of my dashboard faded. Even the rhythmic hum of the tires on the road thinned into silence. The hitchhiker spoke again, but not to me. There used to be a house here, he murmured, like a man remembering his own funeral. Yellow siding, porch light always left on. A woman stood out front every night, even when it snowed. Said she was waiting for her son, but he never made it back from the river. I glanced sideways, not back, and saw something unnatural. A building, yes, but the windows were boarded from the inside and there were no doors. Just a blank, sagging facade slouching toward the edge of the street. Another house crawled into view. It flickered like a faulty image, shifting between forms, never staying solid. One moment it looked freshly built, the next half burned. I kept driving. The road curved. The curve didn't end. You see it, don't you? He said. This place, the one behind Butter Street, is stitched from what people leave behind. Grief, mostly. Secrets. All the things no one wants to claim. I didn't reply. The GPS on the dash blinked once, then filled with symbols I couldn't recognize. Not letters, not numbers, just shapes. Like something carved into old stone in a place I'd never meant to find. In the rearview mirror, motion caught my eye. I couldn't see his face, still just a wet outline slouched against the dark, but I saw his finger pointing, slow and deliberate, toward something outside. Children, dozens of them, standing silently in the yards, each one watching the car pass with hollow, waiting eyes. They didn't move, didn't blink. Their heads all tilted slightly in the same direction, like flowers leaning toward something that wasn't the sun. I gripped the wheel tighter. Another flash. In the mirror this time. A woman running across the street behind us, barefoot, hair tangled, mouth open in a scream I couldn't hear. As fast as she appeared, she vanished again. My heart kicked in my chest. My jaw locked. "You should have followed her," the hitchhiker said. "When she asked, she was brave enough to leave." A lump formed in my throat. "You told her to go alone, said you had too many things to finish first." He paused. "But you never did finish them, did you?" My vision blurred. I drove faster. Every turn in the road looked the same, like the world had been caught in a loop, a film reel stuttering on the same haunted frame. Eventually, I stopped seeing trees altogether. Phone poles leaned sideways, bending like sickly things trying to crawl away. Stop signs twisted inward, their messages warped. SOTPYOELD. Don't. The sky had no stars, no clouds, just an empty, matte black dome that pressed lower every mile. Still, he spoke, always calm, always steady. "You know what makes Butter Street different?" the hitchhiker asked. "It's the only road that remembers the last thing someone said." He tapped the back of my seat once, gently. "You wrote it down, didn't you, in that journal of yours? Her last words?" I had. Page 1, underlined. She never said goodbye. I wanted to scream. I didn't. I kept my eyes forward, just like the rules. The side windows now showed buildings with no insides, just hollow frames of drywall and beams, suspended in nothing. One of them flashed like a strobe, and for half a second I saw her, Abigail, standing inside. She was facing away. She never turned. "She walks here sometimes," the hitchhiker whispered, "but not for you, not yet." The road narrowed. Gravel crackled beneath the tires, sharp and angry. We were close. The hitchhiker's voice dropped lower. Something shifted in his tone, not cruel, not mocking, just knowing. "We're nearly there." I checked the time. 3:26 a.m., 3:33 a.m. The hitchhiker hadn't said a word for nearly 7 minutes, not since he murmured, "We're nearly there." And then he spoke again. "Pull over." His voice had changed, not louder, not sharper, just heavier, like it had weight, like each syllable knew something I didn't. I obeyed. Gravel crackled under the tires as I eased the car to the shoulder. The road here felt narrower, tighter. The air had gone thick, pressing in from every side, though the temperature hadn't changed. The shadows outside shifted unnaturally, curling at the edges of the windshield like smoke. And there it was again, dripping, water, close, but not from rain. The air was still bone dry, and the sky still black and empty. Yet I heard it, drops pattering softly behind me, like something was leaking, or someone. I didn't turn. I couldn't. The rules were clear. Don't look at him, not until he steps out. My hands clenched the steering wheel, every knuckle glowing white. The silence that followed wasn't peaceful. It was a waiting thing, an expectant thing. The hitchhiker finally moved. I heard the door click softly, not open, just unlocked. That was the signal I could ask now. The one question I'd carried with me since the night Abigail died. The one I'd whispered to the empty corners of my house. The one I couldn't forgive myself for never answering. My throat tightened, my jaw quivered, and then, into the thick blackness in front of me, I asked, "Is Abigail at peace?" No answer. I heard movement behind me, wet fabric shifting, a breath, slow and damp, fogged the space near my right ear. Then came the whisper, "She's not at peace." A pause, as if he waited for me to hope. "And she does blame you." The words carved straight through me. But worse than the sentence was the sound of it, like 100 voices whispered the line in unison from far away and yet from within the car. The interior felt smaller now, shrinking, sinking. My rear-view mirror finally cleared just for a moment, and I saw his eyes, two perfect black voids, pools with no bottom. They held everything I ever feared, everything I denied, and, buried deep, Abigail. She stood within the reflection, behind those eyes, not weeping, not screaming, just staring. The hitchhiker stepped out. The door shut without a sound. I waited, shaken. When I finally dared to look around, he was gone, and so was the town. Just like that, the headlights blinked back to life. The dashboard flared on. My GPS lit up with a normal map. The oppressive weight lifted. Outside, the sky had lightened just slightly, a faint blue bruising the horizon. The normal hum of distant traffic had returned. I looked around and realized I was parked inches from the gravel pit at the far end of Butter Street. A steep black drop into jagged earth. Had I driven a moment longer, I would have gone straight over. I breathed in sharp. My hands released the wheel. They were slick with sweat. Or was it something colder? Something caught my eye. On the dash. A photo. Old, water damaged. It was Abigail. Our wedding picture. The same one I kept in a drawer, never displayed. But this version, it was different. The image was warped, smudged, and her eyes were scratched out. Not blurred, scratched, as if by fingernails. I started the car. Slowly, I pulled away from the edge. I didn't look back. I drove through the edge of dawn. Fields of mist, telephone poles returning to straight angles, the chirp of a bird brave enough to be first. I reached the outskirts of my town around 4:10 a.m. A stop sign, normal. A street lamp, normal. Everything was back, but I wasn't. Just as I turned onto my home street, a soft whisper floated from the passenger side, low, almost inaudible, like wind inside a keyhole. You knew I was there. I froze. The seat beside me was empty, but my mirror had fogged again, and behind the fog, barely visible, was a shape. Long hair, pale shoulders, facing away. I never drove Butter Street again, never even passed it. But I've seen that photo twice more, once on my pillow, once in the mailbox, always wet, always with her eyes gone, and sometimes, when the night turns wrong and the air feels still, I hear it again, dripping, and a whisper on the wind. It's a bad night for rain. It wasn't the hitchhiker who came looking for peace. It was Abigail. Story 4. The Ghost at Golden's Edge. They say every horror story begins with a choice that doesn't feel like one. For me, it was Craig's idea, a joyride through the backroads to nowhere, just to kill time and shake off the weight of our boring town. The air was heavy that night, the kind of thick darkness that feels more like a presence than the absence of light. The dashboard clock read 2:47 a.m. when we passed the last sign of civilization. Beyond that, it was just dirt roads and tree silhouettes, sharp against a moonless sky. "You sure this road loops back to the freeway?" I asked. Craig just grinned. "Yeah, man, trust me." It was the kind of grin he always wore when he was winging it. We were low on gas when we spotted the station, a flickering canopy light over a cracked asphalt lot, one pump, and a window smeared in grime. There was no name, no signage, just that dull yellow glow humming against the silence. I stayed in the car while Craig got out to fill up. The station looked deserted, but then I saw him, a figure inside the booth. Old guy, pale, not moving, just staring at me, eyes locked like he'd been waiting. Craig waved me out. "Card's not working. Come help." Reluctantly, I stepped out, the air colder than it had any right to be. I could hear the pump click as he tried again. Then the numbers blinked, backwards, the dollar amount reversed by a few cents. Then froze. "What the hell?" Craig muttered. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I checked it. 3 a.m. on the dot. Then the screen glitched, flickering static before it cut to black. The gas station lights above us began to stutter like a strobe trying to find rhythm. I turned to the booth again, but the figure was gone. No footsteps, no door creak, just gone. "We're leaving," I said. Craig didn't argue. He just dropped the nozzle and jumped in. We pulled out of that lot fast, but something followed. In the rear view for just a second, I swear I saw a shape. A silhouette of a car. No lights, no sound, just motion. I spun around to look with my own eyes. Nothing. "Jake, dude, you're jumpy. It's just a busted gas pump and a weird old man." Maybe he was right. Maybe I was tired. But the farther we drove, the quieter it got. Like even the crickets were holding their breath. And that clock. Still stuck at 3 a.m. Back then I told myself it was just a glitch, a bad road, a long night. But something started out there with us, and something that knew our names. And it would follow us all the way to Golden. It's strange how silence can get louder the deeper you go. After the gas station, Craig kept the music low, maybe out of guilt for brushing off my unease. Or maybe he felt it too. The air, thick with something invisible. The trees closed in like they were leaning closer with every mile, reaching in from both sides of the road. Nothing but our headlights cutting tunnels through the dark. No cars, no stars, no moon. I don't know how long we drove before it happened. Time didn't feel right anymore. I had checked my phone 3 times, and each time it glared back the same frozen time. 3 a.m. I should have said something, should have turned around. But something about the road kept pulling us forward, and then she appeared. It was sudden, like she hadn't stepped onto the road, but had simply been there all along. A woman in a white gown, mid-stride, her hair hanging like wet threads across her face. No time to think. I yelled and jerked the wheel. The tires screamed. The car spun halfway and skidded to a halt, nose facing the trees. The engine hissed softly in the stillness. I jumped out, heart hammering, scanning the road ahead. Nothing, not even tire marks where she should have been, just the forest, dense and unmoving. The trees weren't right. Their branches twisted in unnatural angles like arms mid-reach. Their shadows clung to the pavement like stains that wouldn't dry. Craig got out too, rubbing his face. "What did you see?" There was a woman on the road. She was right there, man. He looked for a long moment, then offered a tired laugh. You're freaking yourself out. Probably just a reflection or something. We've been up too long. I didn't answer. My eyes were still searching the tree line. That's when I saw it. A flickering light ahead, one of those tall metal street lamps humming like a bug zapper from far off. Just under it, a road sign, a battered reflective rectangle. We got back in and crept forward until the beam of our headlights caught it. Golden, 2 miles. My blood turned cold. That can't be right, I said quietly. Craig frowned. Golden's way upstate, like 3 hours north. He was right. I knew it too. There was no reason that town's name should be anywhere near here, and yet there it was. The sign looked rusted, warped at the corners, like it had stood there far too long. Craig glanced at me. We must have taken a wrong turn somewhere. Maybe that was all it was. We drove on, but the forest pressed tighter with every curve, and I kept looking in the mirror. Not for cars, but for her, for the woman. I knew deep down we hadn't seen the last of her. It's hard to explain how a road can feel wrong, but that stretch of blacktop stretching endlessly through the forest, it breathed. We should have reached the freeway by then. We should have seen an exit, a sign, something. But all we got was silence, and trees pressing tighter with every mile. The headlights carved out a narrow cone of visibility, and even that felt like it was closing in. Then we saw it again. Same crooked street light, same rust-pitted sign. Golden, 2 miles. Craig's grip tightened on the wheel. No way we're seeing that again. This has to be a loop or some glitch in the GPS, or it's not the GPS, I said. My voice was hoarse. I didn't even remember speaking last. Check the clock. He glanced down. 3 a.m. Still. I pulled out my phone. No bars, no Wi-Fi, no movement. The battery hadn't even dropped 1%. It was like time had been sliced open and stitched shut in the wrong order. I don't think we're going anywhere, Craig. We tried to laugh, because laughing was safer than thinking. But the silence that followed swallowed it up too quickly. We passed the same sign again. I swear the lamp flickered harder this time, almost angry, like it knew we noticed. Craig pulled over. Okay, we stop. We figure this out. We go back if we have to. He shut the engine off. The sudden silence roared. We sat there, breathing. I stared out the windshield, my eyes tracking the stretch of road ahead. A slight curve, a hill maybe, more trees. Then I saw her, just beyond the reach of the headlights. Still pale, same tattered white gown, hair like soaking wet threads across her face. Craig, I whispered. He looked up. No. She didn't move, but she didn't need to, because behind her the wood shifted. Figures emerged, first 3, then a dozen, then too many to count. They stood behind her in rows like some silent audience, dark shapes, barely human. Their faces, or what should have been faces, seemed blurred, masked in shadow, or smeared like a bad memory. Craig reached for the keys, fumbling. We're going, right now. I nodded, too afraid to speak. But before he could start the car, the woman tilted her head. A sickening crack echoed in the stillness, as if her neck had snapped mid-motion, and the crowd behind her, they shifted forward as one, not walking, just moving, like being dragged by something invisible. Craig turned the ignition. Nothing. The car didn't even try. Then the radio sputtered, static at first, then something else. A sound I'll never forget. Breathing, not ours, not human, ragged, wet, and too close. Craig slammed the wheel. The engine roared to life like it had never stopped working. He threw the car into drive and floored it. We tore down that road, heartbeats thudding louder than the tires. The figures vanished in the rear view. The woman didn't follow, but I knew the road wasn't letting us go. Because after less than a minute, the trees parted and that same streetlight reappeared. And there it was again. Golden. 2 miles. Craig didn't speak. Neither did I. We just drove. And ahead of us, the night stretched on, endless, hungry, and waiting. I used to think roads only led somewhere, a destination, a home, an end. But the road we were on that night, it wasn't taking us anywhere. It was keeping us. Craig and I had just watched an army of impossible figures rise from the woods like a memory you can't forget but never lived. I floored the gas, rubber screaming as we tore forward. The loop had tightened, the air itself pressing in on us like we were buried alive inside the night. The sign passed again. Golden. 2 miles. It looked older now, as if time was peeling away around it. Or maybe it had never been new. I glanced over at Craig. He hadn't said a word since the woman reappeared, since the others came. His face was turned slightly toward the window, lit faintly by the dashboard glow. But something about him felt wrong. He wasn't blinking. He wasn't breathing. He was smiling. "Craig?" I whispered. He turned, slowly, almost mechanically. That's when I saw it. His mouth stretched wider than it should. Too wide. His lips split at the corners like torn fabric. And behind them, rows, not just of teeth, but shards. Long, white, needle-like things packed in a jaw that no human should have. I screamed and slammed the brakes. The car jerked sideways, tires shrieking against the cracked asphalt. But Craig didn't flinch. He just smiled and leaned in, close enough for me to hear something. A sound like cracking bone and boiling water whispered from behind that inhuman grin. "You brought us here." My phone buzzed, loud in the silence. A single text from the cracked screen. From Vanessa. "Darling, who's Craig?" The world tilted. My breath stopped. I hadn't told her his name. I hadn't mentioned him at all. Not ever. Because there was no Craig. The thing beside me, it wasn't a friend. It had never been. I didn't think. I couldn't. I unbuckled my seatbelt and threw myself out of the car at 90 miles an hour. Glass and wind and pain smashing into me like a wave of fire. I hit the ground. Everything went black. Weeks later, I woke up in the hospital. Bandages, tubes, machines. The nurses said I'd been found alone, half dead, beside a totaled Honda that had wrapped itself around a tree like it was trying to escape something. The police asked about the passenger. They said no one else had been found, no prints, no ID, not even an extra seatbelt mark. Just me. But I remember every mile, every sign, every impossible face in the dark. Most of all, I remember that smile and the text. "Darling, who's Craig?" I never replied, because I don't know. I don't think I ever knew. And that's the part that haunts me the most. The next time you're out on the back roads at night, if you see a sign that says, "Golden, 2 miles, turn around, don't stop, don't speak, and whatever you do, don't let him smile at you." Story 5. Deserted highways and a deadly hitchhiker. I shouldn't have been on the road that late. The sky was a slab of pure black. No stars, no moon, just a void swallowing the highway in front of me. My headlights felt like a pair of flickering candles trying to hold back a collapsing night. I was deep into the desert stretch between counties, too far from the last gas station, too far from anything resembling comfort. No signal, no signs. Just a crumbling two-lane road that went on forever. I gripped the steering wheel a little tighter. The hum of the tires against cracked asphalt was the only sound. Even the wind outside had died. It was the kind of silence that feels intentional, like the world is holding its breath. The clock on the dash blinked 1:43 a.m. I hadn't seen another car in almost an hour. My eyelids felt heavy, but I forced them open again and again. I told myself I just needed to get through another 20 miles, maybe less. There was supposed to be a roadside motel up ahead, but in the dark, distance becomes a guessing game. The deeper I drove, the worse the unease got. There's something about a long night drive that messes with your mind. Your thoughts turn inward. The shadows outside the glass begin to feel alive. I found myself staring too long into the mirrors, expecting to see, I don't know, something. Sometimes the dark just feels too thick, like it's waiting. Then I saw her. At first, I wasn't sure if she was real. Just a vague, pale shape at the edge of the high beam, motionless, hunched near the shoulder. I slowed down instinctively, squinting through the windshield. A woman, or at least the shape of one. She was wrapped in a coat, far too big for her, the collar turned up, and a long scarf wound tightly around her head and neck. Her posture was stiff, arms crossed tightly over her chest, like she was freezing, though it wasn't cold. She didn't wave. She didn't even look at me, just stood there. I rolled past her slowly, heart thudding. Every instinct told me to keep going, but my foot drifted toward the brake. Maybe it was guilt, or just the strangeness of seeing another person out here in the middle of this endless black stretch. I stopped. The rearview mirror caught her silhouette again, still not moving. I hesitated. My gut clenched, but I reached for the door lock anyway, and as I did, a thought slid across the back of my mind, quiet but urgent. You don't stop for shadows on roads like this. But it was already too late. I inched the car in reverse, headlights painting the roadside in harsh, bouncing light. The figure turned slowly, hesitant, as if she hadn't expected me to stop. Her scarf obscured most of her face, but I could make out pale skin and wide, shadowed eyes. She stepped toward the passenger side door like every movement hurt. I hesitated before unlocking it. The door creaked open. She climbed in wordlessly, the scent of dust and something colder, like old water and damp cloth, wafting in with her. She shut the door softly. For a moment, she just sat there, curled into herself. Then her voice rasped out, "Anywhere's good, just away from here." I nodded. That should have been the moment I said no. That should have been the moment I asked why. But I didn't. I pulled back onto the highway, tires crackling over grit. The silence inside the car was instant and absolute. I stole a glance at her. Her posture was strange, like her shoulders weren't set right. The coat swallowed her frame, too big by far, the scarf coiled too tightly around her neck and jaw. Only a sliver of her mouth and the tip of her nose were visible. She didn't look at me, didn't even move. The road stretched ahead, blank and endless. My headlights seemed to reach no farther than a dozen feet before fading into nothing. Minutes passed, or maybe more. It was hard to tell. Time thins out when you're tense, and I was tense. I can take you to the next rest stop, I offered, trying to pierce the silence. Not too far now. No response. I glanced again. She was staring straight ahead, hands buried in her sleeves. Her legs were drawn up slightly like she was trying to disappear into herself. Something about the way she sat, it felt wrong, not scared, not grateful, just like she was watching something I couldn't see. The hair on my neck prickled. Cold night, I said, forcing my voice calm. She didn't even blink. I didn't want to seem cruel, I admitted later, thinking back, but something was off. The air in the car felt thicker now, like the heater had stopped working. Every breath felt heavier. Still she didn't speak. Still she didn't move. My hands tightened on the steering wheel. The road went on, and behind me, silence rode in the passenger seat, wrapped in wool and shadow, waiting. The miles crawled. I kept my eyes fixed on the road, but I could feel her sitting there beside me. Still, too still. No fidgeting, no shifting in the seat, not even a sigh. Just motionless. I stole a glance at her through the corner of my eye. Her scarf had loosened just slightly, exposing more of her face now, but something wasn't right. Her expression hadn't changed. Not once. Not even a flicker. No emotion, no fatigue, nothing. It looked like a mask. My hands trembled on the steering wheel. The cabin air had turned almost suffocating, like the heater had suddenly cranked up on its own. But when I checked the dials, everything was off. I could hear her breathing now, barely, soft, erratic, unnatural. It wasn't human breathing. Every now and then, I'd glance at the rearview mirror and catch her reflection, but her face looked different in the glass, blurred, elongated somehow, like her features didn't belong together. I kept driving, kept pretending everything was fine. Then, without warning, she sighed loudly. It was a sound like pressure being released, sharp, wet, too close to my ear. Even though she hadn't moved, I flinched, gripping the wheel so hard my knuckles went white. Then her voice came, low and strange, vibrating like it came from deep in a chest not made for speech. "Thanks," she said. I thought I was a goner. It hit me all at once, the way she'd said it, flat, wrong, like the words didn't belong in her mouth. And her voice, it wasn't the same one that asked for a ride. This one was deeper, rougher, fake. I slammed the brakes. Gravel and dust kicked up around the car as I veered off to the shoulder. "What are you doing?" she asked, voice calm now. Too calm. "Get out," I said. She turned to me slowly. I finally saw her full face in the light, and I wished I hadn't. Her skin looked stretched, as if it had been pulled too tight across the bone. Her eyes were hollow, not scared, not confused, just watching. She didn't argue, didn't ask questions. She smiled, only slightly, a twitch at the corners of her mouth, not warmth, not gratitude, amusement. Then, without a word, she opened the door and stepped out into the dark. I sat there, frozen, watching her walk away, the oversized coat dragging behind her like dead weight. She never looked back, not once. She disappeared into the night like smoke. No lights, no other cars, just the silhouette of that too large coat slowly swallowed by the blackness. I waited until I couldn't see her anymore. Then I locked the doors, hands trembling, and floored it back onto the highway. My chest felt tight, not just from fear, but from something worse. Confusion, guilt, a gnawing sense that I'd just escaped something that wasn't supposed to let people go. The car was dead silent now, but the air still felt wrong. like her presence had soaked into the seats and wouldn't leave. Every few minutes, I glanced into the rearview mirror. I half expected to see her again, sitting there, head turned slowly toward me, smiling. She never reappeared, but that didn't help me sleep. Back at the motel, if you could even call it that, I lay awake on stiff sheets, the TV buzzing static on mute. I couldn't shake the image of her face or what was beneath it. At some point, I dozed off. I wish I hadn't. In the dream, I was back in the car, but it wasn't her in the passenger seat. It was a bundle of clothing, coat, scarf, wig, propped up on empty bones, and the scarf was unraveling slowly, strand by strand, until it slipped down. Underneath was a face that didn't belong to any one person. It shifted, and then it grinned. Morning light offered no comfort. I left without checking out, just wanted to get out of town. I figured I'd drive until the memory blurred, but at the first gas station I pulled into, everything stopped. Inside, taped beside the register, was a newspaper. Killer still at large. Fourth victim identified. The headline made my skin go cold. I picked it up, hands barely steady. There she was, the girl, same coat, same scarf, same haunted, lifeless eyes. But the article said she was found 2 days ago in a drainage ditch outside of town, throat slit, clothes missing. A second image on the page stopped my heart altogether. A sketch, the suspect, a man, medium build, last seen dressed in stolen women's clothing, believed to be using disguises to lure victims. The paper slipped from my fingers and hit the floor. Everything inside me sank. I didn't pick up a victim. I picked up the killer, dressed in her skin. I got back in the car, shaking, every nerve firing wrong. I sat there for a long time, engine running, just staring at the road ahead. It all made sense now. The silence, the stiffness, the face that didn't quite move. I gave a ride to something wearing someone else, and I had let it into my car. I was lucky, too lucky. That night could have ended differently. It should have. And sometimes I wonder if maybe it still might. Maybe he never left. Maybe he's still out there, still hitching rides. But I'll never stop again. I don't care who's out there, what they look like. Story 6. The Violent Backroad Hitchhiker. The clock on the dash blinked 12:13 a.m. in soft green numbers, casting just enough glow to remind me how late, or early, it had gotten. The world outside was ink black, washed only occasionally by our headlights, as we carved our way through the damp woods of northern Washington. No other cars, no distant houses, just the hum of tires on cracked asphalt and the faint buzz of static from a weak radio station trying to hold on. In the back, Malik was half asleep against the window, earbuds in, hoodie up. Jenna, sitting shotgun, was scrolling through her phone with the kind of focus only bad signal could inspire, waiting for the bars to blink back. Trevor was driving, hands clenched tighter than usual around the wheel. He didn't like rural roads, especially ones that wound aimlessly through tree-thick nowhere. Then we saw him. He appeared like a glitch. One blink he wasn't there. The next, a shadowy figure formed at the edge of our high beams. A man, backpack slung low, thumb outstretched. "Is that a hitchhiker?" Jenna said, her voice flat, unsure if she believed it herself. Malik perked up. "Seriously? Who even hitchhikes anymore?" Trevor slowed the car. "Nope, not stopping, not out here." But I was already leaning forward, squinting. The guy looked like he'd been walking for hours, maybe days. His jeans were streaked with mud. His hoodie hung off him like it had soaked through a storm and never dried. He didn't wave, didn't smile, just stood there, arm out, like it was a ritual he had no faith in. "I mean," I said, "we can't just leave him out here. Look around. There's nothing for miles." Trevor sighed, more pressure in that sound than any of us wanted to unpack. "1 minute," he muttered. "One. If he's weird, he's gone." We pulled over. He approached slowly like he wasn't quite sure we were real. Up close, he looked even rougher. Unshaven, hair matted beneath a threadbare beanie. His backpack was huge, worn canvas bulging at odd angles. Probably camping gear. Maybe. "You headed north?" I asked. "Yeah," he said, voice hoarse like it had been days since he'd spoken. "Name's Ray. Appreciate the lift." He climbed in, sat behind Trevor without another word. Jenna offered a tense smile. Malik avoided eye contact entirely. At first it was nothing, just silence. The kind you expect on a long night drive with someone you don't know. He didn't ask where we were headed, didn't share where he'd come from, just stared out the window like it was whispering something we couldn't hear. Still, he seemed harmless. Scruffy, sure. Quiet, maybe too quiet, but nothing to freak out about. He looked like a guy who'd gotten lost on a camping trip and needed a break, I'd tell myself later. What harm could he do with 4 of us and 1 of him? That thought clung to me, even as the air grew heavier, even as the road seemed to darken, even as Ray's eyes found the rearview mirror, locking on mine with a calm that felt too still, and even as he finally spoke again. "You ever wonder how long someone could scream," he said, voice almost a whisper, "before their throat gives out?" No one answered, and the road ahead just kept getting darker. He didn't talk again for miles. Ray sat quietly, breathing soft and steady, staring out the window like the woods were whispering secrets only he could hear. The headlights dragged along endless pine trunks and patches of wet fog, painting everything in short, flickering strokes. It felt like we were slipping deeper into something slower, heavier, wrong. Jenna kept glancing at me, eyes saying what her lips wouldn't. "He's weird. Why is he so quiet?" Even Malik, who could fall asleep anywhere, had straightened up in his seat, earbuds pulled out, the tension in the car cutting through whatever music he'd been zoning out to. We should have trusted that silence, because when Ray finally did speak, the words came like cracks in a dam. "Do you ever think about what your bones taste like?" The question didn't come with a laugh or even a smirk, just calm, quiet curiosity, like he was asking the time or the weather. Trevor's fingers twitched slightly on the wheel. "Excuse me?" Ray leaned forward between the seats, just enough for us to feel his breath more than see his face. "I said, bones. Yours. Everyone's. Just seems weird we all carry something so breakable, so edible, so close to the surface." His voice was thin now, stretched into something dry and fraying. "You ever wonder how long you could scream before your throat split open?" Jenna stiffened, turning halfway in her seat. "That's not funny." "I wasn't joking," Ray said, voice flatter than the road ahead. We drove in silence for a long minute after that. None of us knew what to say. We didn't want to make it worse. Finally, Trevor reached for the GPS on his dash, tapping the screen to reroute. The last place we wanted to be was alone with this guy in the middle of nowhere. But Ray reached forward slowly and pressed his hand over the screen. Not fast, not aggressive, just possessive. like it belonged to him now. "No need," he said. "I know a faster way." Malik cleared his throat. "You know a faster way to where exactly?" Ray didn't answer right away. He tilted his head, eyes distant, almost nostalgic. "Less watched roads," he said. "More honest paths. The kind of roads that don't lie to you or forget you." Trevor pulled his hand away from the GPS, glanced at me. I gave a subtle shake of my head, but we were already turning. Ray guided us off the highway onto a winding, unlit back road I'd never seen before. The pavement ended after half a mile, then gravel, then dirt. The trees grew closer, thicker, hungrier. "No signal," Jenna said quietly, checking her phone again. She wasn't really talking to us, just naming a fact to make it real. Ray smiled. Not a friendly smile. Something deeper. "I like it better this way," he said. "No one listening, no one watching, just the road and the ones who take it." Malik looked over his shoulder. "Hey, man, look, we're cool and all, but I think we're just going to drop you off somewhere lit. Somewhere populated." Ray turned toward him slowly. "Populated things are weak. They wear masks. Out here, people are what they really are." We didn't respond. We just kept driving. No one said a word when the trees thickened, swallowing moonlight. No one said a word when Ray began humming. A low, tuneless sound that seemed to rattle the dashboard and settle behind our ribs. And that's when I realized it wasn't the questions, it wasn't the smile, it wasn't even the roads. It was how he spoke to us, like he knew us, like he'd met us before, like this was all already written, like we were just following a script that only he had read. We should have turned back when the road stopped being a road. The gravel had long since vanished under our tires, swallowed by a layer of wet leaves and tangled branches. What we were following now barely counted as a trail, just two faint ruts in the dirt that wove through thick, unbroken forest. Every tree looked the same, every curve blurred into the next. The GPS had frozen 10 minutes ago. No signal, no reception, no streetlights, just trees and silence. Trevor's grip on the steering wheel was white-knuckled, like he was trying to choke the tension out of it. Jenna hadn't said a word in 10 minutes, not since Ray's last question. Malik leaned close to me, voice a whisper only I could hear. "We need to get him out. Now." I nodded slightly, eyes on the rear view. Ray was still there, still sitting calmly in the middle of the back seat. Eyes half-lidded, breathing slow, as if the world around him didn't exist, as if he was waiting for something. Trevor cleared his throat and glanced at him in the mirror. "Hey, I think this path just loops around. Maybe we should—" Ray laughed. Not a chuckle, not even amusement. It was a crack, like something inside him had snapped in two. He leaned forward again, but slower this time, like every joint moved on a different rhythm, like he was remembering how to use his body. "You know what the problem is with roads like this?" he said, eyes still fixed on nothing. "You think they're taking you somewhere, but really, they just want you." Jenna twisted around in her seat. "That's it. No more. Get out. Right now." Ray's grin widened. His lips peeled back too far, revealing crooked teeth. Too many of them. Still smiling, he began to hum. A low, tuneless hum, like something you'd hear through the walls of a place you shouldn't be. It vibrated in the back of our skulls, wrong in a way that made it hard to breathe. "Stop the car," Malik said. "I don't care if we're in the woods. Stop. Now." Trevor slowed down, hands trembling. The tires crunched to a halt on wet earth. Jenna flung her door open and started to climb out. "Ray, Outside. Walk. Go wherever the hell you came from." Ray didn't move. Instead, he leaned back in his seat, hands clasped in his lap. Then he sang, a single line, words we didn't recognize, language that didn't belong. It wasn't loud, just loud enough to feel close, like it was being whispered inside our skulls. Trevor turned to look at him, eyes wide. "What are you?" Then Ray lunged. It was fast, unnatural. One moment he was still in the seat, the next his arm shot forward like a rope pulled taut, fingers clamping around the steering wheel. His other hand grabbed Trevor's face, not hitting, not pushing, gripping, like trying to crush it. And then he jerked the wheel. The tires skidded sideways. Jenna was halfway out, screaming. Malik grabbed at the dashboard. I tried to brace myself. But it all happened too fast. The car snapped right, then left. The front end slammed into a fallen log we hadn't seen in the dark. Then everything tipped, flipping, screaming, metal shrieking, glass shattering. There was 1 second of silence, just one, and then everything slammed down with a final, gut-wrenching crunch. When I opened my eyes, the world was sideways. The windshield was a web of cracks, blood smearing across it in handprints I didn't remember making. Trevor was slumped against the wheel, motionless. Jenna was groaning somewhere behind me. Malik was crying out in pain, or rage, or both. Ray was gone. For a moment, I thought he'd been thrown clear. I tried to sit up. A hot stab of pain shot through my ribs. I turned my head and froze. He was outside, pressed up against my shattered window. His face was right there, eyes locked to mine, no expression, just watching. Then, slowly, his mouth opened. His tongue dragged across the cracked glass in a long, wet smear. I screamed, but before I could move, before I could react, his hands punched through what was left of the door, and he ripped it off like it was made of cardboard. He pulled me out, dragged me across broken branches and cold earth, nails digging into my arms. He didn't speak, didn't grunt or snarl. He just grinned, like the forest itself was laughing through him. I kicked, I fought, but the trees were too thick, the dark too deep, and his strength, it wasn't human. Behind me, I heard Jenna yelling my name. I saw Malik crawling through the broken passenger door, blood streaking his forehead. But the sound of Ray's laugh drowned everything. It was the only thing I could hear as the trees closed in. That laughter, dry, splintered, endless. I came to in flashes, first pain, dull but constant. My body was slumped sideways across the ruined passenger seat, ribs screaming with every breath. The air inside the car was thick, wet with smoke and gasoline. Then came the silence, the kind that makes your ears ring, that makes you sure you've gone deaf, or worse, that you're the only one left alive. Trevor wasn't moving. His head rested against the airbag streaked with blood. I couldn't tell if he was breathing. Malik's voice broke through next, raw and panicked. He was trapped, legs pinned between the front seat and what used to be the dash. I can't feel," he kept saying over and over like a broken record. Jenna was trying to climb out the back window. Her arm hung at an impossible angle. She was crying but quiet. Her mouth moved, but no sound came out. And Ray? He was gone. For a moment, I thought we were free. That maybe he'd died in the crash. Maybe he'd been thrown into a tree, broken somewhere in the brush. Then I saw it. Movement outside. Something hunched and dark, crawling low across the grass. Not walking, crawling, like it was sniffing for something, like it was hunting. I didn't even have time to yell before he was there, right outside my window. His face slammed into the cracked glass hard enough to shake the car. He grinned, his mouth smeared red with blood that didn't look like his. His tongue lolled out, dragging across the glass like an animal marking its territory. Then he began to laugh, short bursts at first, then longer, louder, rising until it sounded like it was coming from everywhere, echoing in the trees and in our skulls. Jenna screamed. Malik yelled something I didn't catch. Ray ripped the door off its hinges like it was made of cardboard. And then his hands were on me. I don't remember being pulled out of the car. I remember the cold, the bark slicing into my back, the wet earth swallowing my legs as he dragged me deeper into the woods. He never spoke, never said a word. He didn't have to. His eyes did all the talking. They were wrong, not just mad, empty, like something inside had rotted long ago and no one ever noticed. Like he didn't see people, only things. I fought. I think I kicked, bit, screamed. But the forest swallowed the sound, and still he grinned. Then just like that, I wasn't in his hands anymore. I was alone, lying flat on my back in a clearing I didn't recognize. Sky above, barely visible through the towering canopy. No Ray, no friends, only silence, and the sound of something breathing, slow and deep, somewhere just beyond the trees. I don't know how long I was out there. Time didn't feel real. There was no sun to track, no light to follow. I wandered, calling for help until my voice was gone. When I finally stumbled back to the road, hours, maybe days later, there was nothing left. No car, no glass, no blood, just the smell of smoke, the distant whine of sirens, and boot prints at the mud that weren't mine. Aftermath, they found Jenna and Malik. Malik's legs were shattered, but he lived. So did Jenna. She didn't talk for a week, and when she finally did, all she could say was, "He smiled while he dragged him away." Trevor didn't make it. They never found Ray, never found me, at least not the part of me that mattered. Story 7, Midnight Passage and the Pack of Creatures. I was already 4 hours into the drive when the road stopped feeling real. It stretched ahead of me like some kind of inky conveyor belt, winding endlessly through black desert nothingness. I'd taken Highway 86 at midnight, hoping to make it across the state by morning. No towns, no detours, just miles of cracked asphalt and the hum of my engine. At first, it was peaceful. A strange kind of silence you only get in the deep hours of night, when the world has gone still. The road was empty. No oncoming traffic, no headlights in the rear view, just the occasional skeletal road sign flashing past like a ghost. My dashboard glowed dull green, casting weird shadows across the cabin. The farther I went, the stranger it felt. The GPS had gone silent an hour ago. Signal lost. My phone was barely clinging to a single flickering bar. The heater was off, and yet the air inside the car had become strangely warm, the kind of warmth that made my skin itch and my thoughts feel sticky. Then I saw him. He was standing just beyond the next curve at the edge of the road where the cracked shoulder met the sand. No flashlight, no car, just a man, barely visible under the harsh sweep of my headlights, with one arm stretched out, thumb up. There was no mistaking what he wanted. I had every reason to keep going. Every rational part of me screamed not to stop. But as I passed, my foot lifted off the gas. On its own, it felt like, and I was braking, pulling off to the shoulder before I even realized what I was doing. He didn't move as I came to a stop. Didn't flinch. He just stood there, staring straight ahead with eyes that caught the light in the wrong way. Flat, pale, too reflective. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe a stranded traveler. Maybe he'd broken down miles back and had been walking for hours. Maybe I was just tired and my mind was playing tricks. But none of those maybes explained why my throat had gone dry, or why my fingers trembled as I reached across to unlock the passenger door. The man moved then, not in a hurry, not like someone relieved or grateful, just a slow, fluid motion, like gravity didn't apply to him the same way it did to the rest of us. He opened the door without a word, ducked his head, and got in. He didn't even look at me, just sat there, staring straight ahead, his mouth stretched into a smile that didn't move, not even a twitch. And the smell, God, the smell, like something left too long in the sun, a mixture of mildew and rot and something else, something chemical, acidic. My stomach rolled as I pulled back onto the road, and still not a word passed between us. I didn't ask him where he was going, not yet. I just drove, and the black ribbon wound on ahead. I don't remember inviting him in. I don't even remember unlocking the door. 1 second he was outside, a silhouette in the edge of my headlights. The next, he was in the passenger seat, shutting the door with a soft click. The sound felt too final, like a seal being broken, or maybe closed. That stench hit me instantly. It was the kind of smell that curled into your nostrils and sank into your clothes. Rotting meat, roadkill left too long in the sun, wet copper, something oily and foul beneath it all. I gagged and cracked the window, but the air outside was dry and dead. The smell didn't budge. He hadn't said a word yet, just sat there, hands folded in his lap like he was waiting for something. I chanced to glance his way. He wasn't looking at me, just forward, through the windshield. His eyes were wide, too wide, and dry, unblinking. His mouth was fixed in that same expression, a smile, but not a real one, a stretch of lips over 2 straight teeth, like a mask carved from meat and frozen in place. I forced a cough and asked, "Where are you headed?" For a moment, silence. Then he spoke. His voice was so low it sounded wrong, like it came from somewhere below the car, scraping up through the floorboards. "Where the road ends." I waited, expecting a laugh or a grin to follow. Nothing. He just kept staring straight ahead. The air inside the car turned thick. I checked the heater. It was off, had been off since I started the drive, but my skin was sweating, my shirt sticking to my back. I shifted uncomfortably and reached to turn on the AC. Nothing happened. The lights were on, engine running, but the dials were dead. Outside, the world had vanished. The highway had always felt empty, but now it was like we were driving through a vacuum. No stars, no signs, just the beam of my headlights slicing into dust and dark. Time got strange. I kept checking the dashboard clock, but the numbers didn't make sense. 5 minutes passed in what felt like seconds. Or maybe it was the other way around. My mind was slipping. Every few miles, the hitchhiker would mutter something. Not to me. Not in any language I recognized. Just syllables. A cracked whisper that made my ears itch. I told myself it was nonsense, some regional dialect. But deep down, I knew better. Those sounds weren't meant to be spoken. The dashboard lights flickered once. The steering wheel felt looser in my hands. I blinked, eyes burning. He hadn't moved, not even a twitch. Still smiling, still staring. I wanted to pull over. I wanted to throw him out of the car and speed away into the night. But I couldn't. My hands were locked to the wheel, my foot pressed steady on the gas, and the black ribbon of highway unfurled endlessly ahead of us. I should have pulled over, should have turned around hours ago, but the road just kept pulling me forward. The silence between us had turned unbearable. His muttering had stopped, thank God, but it left behind something worse, the waiting. It felt like he was waiting for something to happen, or worse, for me to do something first. My eyes stung. I blinked hard, then again. The lines on the road blurred together, a single second of darkness behind my eyelids, just a moment to rest. That's all I needed. And then I snapped awake. The car swerved slightly before I straightened it. My heart pounded. Instinctively, I looked to the right. Empty. The passenger seat was vacant. No door slam, no sound, just gone. But here's the thing. The door was still locked, the handle still flush. I reached over and touched the seat. Cold. My stomach sank like a stone. Something was wrong, more wrong than before, and then I felt it, a presence, not beside me, behind me. And then, pressure. Icy, merciless pressure around my throat. I couldn't breathe. My hands flew up, trying to claw away the invisible grip, my knuckles brushing against something not quite solid, but absolutely there. Skin that was slick and cold like pond water in winter. I kicked. My heel slammed into the dash. The steering wheel jerked. The car veered, tires thudding onto the shoulder, but I didn't care. With everything I had, I slammed the door lock down and threw myself against the door. It gave. I spilled out, gasping, coughing into the night air, the bitter desert dust scouring my throat raw. I scrambled to my feet, stumbling into the headlight's edge. I turned back, and there he was, standing in the road behind the car, no longer inside. Same face, same frozen smile. But it wasn't him anymore. It was too tall, its limbs too long, its neck tilted at an unnatural angle, head cocked like a broken doll's. And worse, it wasn't alone. Behind it, in the gloom just outside the reach of the headlights, shapes emerged. 1, 2, 3, no, more. They peeled themselves from the shadows like they'd been hiding just under the skin of the night. All of them wrong. Lurching, crawling, walking on two legs, but moving like they didn't belong to their bodies. Their eyes glowed faintly, white, lidless orbs, too round and too dead. Their mouths were wide, unnaturally wide, teeth like splinters set into bleeding gums. I ran, didn't think, didn't look back, just ran. My boots hit pavement hard, lungs pulling ragged air that didn't seem to help. I could hear them behind me, soft, erratic footfalls, claws skittering against asphalt. Some of them breathed like beasts. Some made no sound at all. The desert stretched on either side of me, flat, empty, hopeless. No moon, no stars, no chance. I knew I couldn't outrun them, not forever, not for long. But I ran anyway. I don't remember falling, just the burn in my legs finally giving out, the scrape of asphalt against my palms, and the wheezing collapse of my lungs. For a second, I thought this was how it ended, on that black ribbon of nothingness, in the middle of nowhere, devoured by something that used to be human, but wasn't anymore. The snarls closed in, guttural, hungry. Feet slapped the pavement behind me, no rhythm, just chaos. One of them let out a dry, clicking sound like bones rattling in a metal drum. Then light. Twin beams exploded across the dark, bright enough to blind. Tires screamed against gravel as a police cruiser swerved to a stop a few yards in front of me. And just like that, everything stopped. The creatures froze. I swear, Mid-stride, one of them lifted a leg and held it there, suspended like a glitch in reality. Their heads snapped toward the car, their glowing eyes dimmed, their grins twitched into something unreadable. They didn't flee, they melted. One by one, they backed away into the dark, their bodies dissolving into the shadows like smoke into air. No footsteps, no sounds, gone. The car door slammed open, boots hit pavement. "You all right?" the officer shouted, rushing to my side. I couldn't speak, could barely lift my head. My throat still ached where the cold fingers had gripped it. My body shook like I was freezing from the inside out. He crouched down, hand on my shoulder. I must have looked insane. Dust-covered, wide-eyed, soaked in sweat, gasping like a dying animal. I tried, voice breaking. There was something in the road. In my car? But how do you explain that? That a man had vanished from a locked seat? That his face came back without him? That 6 things chased you through a desert that was supposed to be empty? The officer looked past me toward my car, still idling on the shoulder, headlights casting weak halos across the dust. "Nobody there now," he said cautiously. "You sure you weren't hallucinating? Maybe some bad air, heat fatigue?" I didn't answer. I wasn't sure myself. What I knew was this: that road hadn't wanted me to leave. Something in that endless stretch of asphalt waited for drivers like me, alone, tired, unaware, and when it found one, it sent him, the one with the smile, the hitchhiker who didn't blink. The officer offered me a ride. I didn't hesitate. I left my car behind without a second glance. Inside the cruiser, I sat in silence as the radio crackled with mundane chatter, traffic updates, a report about a stray coyote near mile marker 83, static. I stared out the window. The desert rolled by, quiet and vast. But for the rest of the night, I didn't see another hitchhiker. No other cars, no movement at all, just shadows, always just shadows. And for the rest of my life, I'll never take that road again. Whatever came out of the dark that night didn't just want a ride. It wanted me. And next time, I might not be lucky enough to wake up in time.